to our viewers about what you're doing today.
What we're doing today?
Just nice and...
All right, okay, so
nice
we're at the BBC. The BBC have had a part in this whole story because in 2009 they were going to put out a journalist got in touch with Robert Green, the main investigator, as I said, and got some information about the whole story from him. Were very interested, found out a lot of their own information in ways that they're able to do. And they had this programme all ready to go out on BBC Scotland, and then practically on the eve of its showing in July 2009, it was pulled off. And so it was not shown. It was also going to go on Radio Scotland, BBC Radio, and then it was going to come down and be shown on Panorama down here. So what happened to that documentary? Why was it pulled? And basically who gave the order to the producer that it should not go out? He said, when he was asked straight away, because obviously he had to tell Anne and Hollie and Robert that it couldn't be shown, the first thing he said was that he'd lose his job if they showed it, which is a sort of somewhat strange thing to say. And then a few weeks later or months later, when he continued to be questioned by supporters and campaigners, he then said, oh, he hadn't said that, that it was a decision taken higher up and nothing to do with him, sort of thing. So we need to have the answers as to why that programme was taken off. We would like to see the programme now. It's very topical and relevant in the current climate of investigating child abuse, and it would help Hollie get justice. So, this is our plea to the BBC.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Top man. We need to stop paedophilia now, people. There's no excuse for child abuse. No, no. Stop paedophilia now, now, now. Wake up, people. It's going on. And we can stop it if we come together, okay? There's no excuse for child abuse. None. No excuse for child abuse. No excuse for covering up the child abusers, the paedophiles. No excuse for child abuse. No excuse for covering up the child abusers, the paedophiles.
So she kept quiet. In 2000, Hollie was able to tell her mum at last what had happened, because her mum and dad had split up. She told her mum that her father had been taking her off at night. She told her mum that he had been raping her in the day. Anne was horrified. She went to the police with Hollie. They reported the abuse to Grampian police, and immediately the police arranged for a forensic medical examination, which is what they should do. And they confirmed, yes, Hollie is a victim of repeated historic abuse. Poor Hollie. And then, what should they have done? They should have gone round to the home of the first person that Hollie named, her father and her brother, and taken the computers and taken the bedding and investigated right there and then in May 2000. But suddenly, the investigation stopped. The confirmation of the abuse was obtained, but the investigation stopped dead. And that's why we're here today. 13 years later, 13 and a half years later, Hollie's abuse is not investigated. Her abusers are at large. All because Grampian police did not investigate in 2000, May 2000, when they first heard of the abuse and confirmed it for themselves. Now, because nothing has been done, a huge campaign has grown up around Hollie. Hollie has named a whole lot of people that she says abused her along with her father and brother. And some of these people are very angry and claim to be very disturbed, distressed, hurt, alarmed, distressed, and all of those things. Rather like Lord McAlpine yesterday, who for an hour on BBC Midday News spoke about his hurt, distress, and the feelings of being named as a paedophile when you believe you're not. And it went to his very bones, and it's the bitterest and most horrible thing that can happen to anybody. And I'm sure the public felt very sorry and very sympathetic for Lord McAlpine. Lots of people tweeted and twittered that they were with him. Yes, it's a horrible thing to wrongly accuse somebody of being a paedophile.
So you do think...
But what if they are, and I'm not saying Lord McAlpine is, I think he's being believed. It's not about him, it's about Hollie's abusers. They claim they're innocent. The main ones, the ones that I want questioned myself, her father and brother, have scarpered off to Portugal. They're swanning it in Portugal. And I think it's very possible that little girls in Portugal are at risk from these monsters. Hollie's older brother started off as a lovely little sweet boy, like all children start off, but very early on, his father started abusing him. And then he became an abuser. He started abusing his sister. This is how it starts. So now he's ended up a monster like his father, terrorizing little girls wherever they are. Why don't we ask the police to go after those two? Bring them back from Portugal for questioning. Greg, Hollie's brother, behaviour in public. So he's already on the police files as some sort of sexual pervert. And Hollie's father was lightly questioned in 2000, I think a phone call or something, but nothing more was done about him. Now these people are the ones that we should focus on. I don't care about the 20 or 22 others that Hollie has named at the moment. They have been named. They've been very angry. They've gone to the law. There's been a trial of the person who named them publicly on the streets of Aberdeen. Justice of a sort has been done, but they confirmed at the trial that none of them had been questioned. Okay, well perhaps they could be questioned for information about Hollie's main abuser, her father, Denis Mackie, because these people are all connected to each other and related, some of them. This is a family ring. But the problem is there's also some senior people of Aberdeen society have been named as part of the ring. Now they may be innocent, we don't know, but what do we need? An investigation. And this is what should have happened 13 years ago, and it should have happened also 4 years ago in 2009. Hang on, 4, 5. Because Grampian police, at Robert Green's behest, came down from Aberdeen to interview Hollie in September 2009 and had the whole story that she'd already told them in 2000, word perfect, absolutely not a word different from what she'd said in 2000, all over again. And they have the taped interview of Hollie, and that is all now on the police files all over again. And she also spoke to 1 or 2 psychiatrists, psychiatric experts, and she spoke to delegates from the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority, who awarded her a substantial sum in compensation for her abuse. So we have the whole scenario of an abuse victim with confirmed abuse that the state accepts was abused, and then no investigation, no pursuit of the abusers. Why cannot the police touch this issue? Why can they not prosecute crimes against children? If somebody's done a murder, the police go hounding round to that person and haul them in and lock them up in the cells and deal with them properly, if they can find them. If they have the clear evidence of a massive crime against a child, with the possibility that other crimes are being committed against other children on the back of that crime, why don't they go after the criminals? Why don't they prosecute, investigate, do what they should do? Why is there a cordon sanitaire around high-level paedophilia? Well, now we have the opportunity, thanks to the latest revelations about Jimmy Savile. The bubble is starting to burst. Or shall we say the boil is bursting. A lot of nasty stuff is coming out. It's very unpleasant, it's distressing. I'm sure people don't feel happy about what they're reading in their newspapers, seeing on their TV screens at the moment, or hearing that hundreds of people abused 10, 20, 30 years ago have reported to the police, the main subject of the current news reporting, Jimmy Savile. Okay, victims, however long ago you're a victim of a crime, it is never too late to prosecute the criminals. It's never too late to report your crimes and to set things in motion to get justice. But now we have somebody who's reported a crime that's happening now, with the very strong likelihood that it's happening now on many fronts as a result of the fact that the police did not investigate. So I say, always, anybody who's a victim of a crime needs to get settlement of that, however long ago it happened. Never too late to get justice and a settlement and closure on your issue. But now we have something happening at the moment which is not being investigated, which is equally criminal, and we've got a cover-up, and that's why we're here today, because of the cover-up. Now the cover-up is almost worse in these cases than the crime, because the crimes of paedophilia, the actual paedophiles, and the torturers of children, thank God, are a minority. You know, some people say, oh, we can't touch it because they're so numerous. They're not. They're not. They are a powerful minority, however. They can be quite powerful people in society, and that's the problem. So around them has grown up this cover-up, this penumbra of hush-hush and don't go there and I shouldn't touch that. And if you say anything about that, you'll lose your job. Or we can't publish that. Oh, no, that's a no-no, that's a no-go. This is the cover-up. A sort of murky shadow forms around the abuser, protecting him from exposure. This is exactly what we've seen with Jimmy Savile. Everybody doing a nudge-nudge, wink-wink, no, we can't talk about that. And even the police complicit in it. And this is really my main gripe, that the police, who are good people, when they join the police, they do so in most cases, in vast majority of cases, for the highest moral reasons. They have a vocation, a calling, to help keep the public safe, to help keep law and order, to protect children. I'm sure that should come in. To protect children should be top of their list in their vocation of joining the public service, like the police. So why don't the police do their job in this case? Well, because of the cover-up, because of senior people saying, you can't go there, you know, this is one area you cannot deal with, and if you do, their heads are going to roll. Threats, death, killings in quiet places. So, and if you're a public servant, you might lose your job if you follow your moral calling to investigate crime. Politicians, the same thing in Parliament. Well, I think they're beginning to wake up in Parliament. They had a debate yesterday about this very issue, about child abuse in Parliament all yesterday afternoon. Makes very interesting reading. So, with a bit of luck, the MPs will start bringing it into the open and pushing for everything to come out at this stage. And maybe some MPs are going to help Hollie. A few of them have already helped Hollie, but far too few. Well, let's hope some more join in now. I'll certainly be asking them. And then that building over there. This is why we're here today, because of that thing. And got some information from him. And he also, this journalist, obtained a very very confidential information from other quarters in Scotland. In fact, information on the case and the story that Anne herself had not been privy to till then. She'd been trying to get, for example, the autopsy on her brother's mysterious death in 1997. And the Crown Office had consistently and persistently withheld that from her. She actually didn't get the autopsy report until December, the last day of December 2009, thanks to Robert Greene at last putting such pressure that they had to hand it over. But this journalist, who I'm not going to name because we don't need to have names here today, he managed to get that autopsy report in May 2000. From where? From whom? And using what powers and special privilege that the BBC seems to have. And what other information might this journalist have obtained from the BBC? And from, not BBC, from the Crown Office. We believe it comes from the Crown Office. We believe that he probably knows and is sitting on, and the BBC colleagues around him, sitting on information about Anne's sectioning. She was sectioned in September 2000 to a mental hospital, and she was pinned down on the ground by 6 or 7 police and social workers and a psychiatric nurse in the mix. Her pants were pulled down, she was injected in the buttocks, and she woke up in the local mental hospital. And who authorised that? We believe the BBC, in the investigation they did in May 2000 for this programme, which never went out, we believe that he must have found out some other stuff about that incident. Who authorised it? Who signed the warrant? We'd like to know those facts. So we'd ask the BBC to stop sitting on these facts about Hollie's case and help Hollie get justice by bringing out what you've got. And perhaps even it would be very nice of you to air the documentary, which we know reached a state of completion because it was pulled almost on the eve that it was due to go out in July 2009. So why not air it now? Because now this issue is going to be very public and you will be right there ahead of the field, BBC. So let's see that documentary. Panorama was going to show it after BBC Scotland had shown it, and BBC Radio Scotland had broadcast it. Panorama was going to show it. So, producers of Panorama, let's have it now. Very, very relevant, topical, pertinent information for right now in 2012, as everybody is talking about paedophilia and how it's been covered up. So let's, BBC, let's please stop the cover-up. Bring out the information, air the documentary, and get behind Hollie's campaign. And if you do, you will possibly, I believe very likely, recoup the moral high ground. Because you will be doing something to stop paedophilia now while it's happening. Not 20 or 30 years down the line when the main perpetrator is already passed on and can't be hurt or embarrassed by the revelations. But now, while the perpetrators are still at large and the children are still being abused, now is the time. And if you do, I'm sure that you will get the public right behind you. The public are outraged, not so much at paedophilia, which people sort of accept is a nasty thing that's gone on for hundreds and thousands of years. It seems to be part of our society, unfortunately, but people are outraged at the cover-up, at the whispering, the nudge, nudge, wink, wink, don't go there. Oh no, you better not mention him, or you better not name him. And it's still going on. Now, the naming of names is actually in quite a big danger now, because since Lord McAlpine has been named, obviously the naming of names is going to be shown up as being a very damaging thing. But if we can't name names, ever again, if there's legislation or a move to purge Twitter or Facebook of naming of names and all the things that might happen, the abusers, and the police are not investigating, as we know they're not, the abusers are going to get away with their abuse. They'll be protected. All we've got as the public is the naming of names. That's why Robert Greene was driven to name the names in Scotland. I'm not going to name a single name today, notice. But Robert Greene, after a year of trying to get the police to do something, finally was driven to name the names, and then the whole thing took off. The whole thing became very public. And that's why we're here today, and we're going to get justice for Hollie. It's not far off. I'm very confident that we are actually going to achieve what Hollie has been asking for 13 years. No doubt about it. We're not many here today, but let nobody ever be fooled. We are hundreds, thousands, millions on the internet. Internet campaigners are not very good at getting off their backsides and coming on the street. But they're very good on Twitter, tweet, Facebook, keeping each other informed. So, the Hollie campaign is by now huge. Pressure is mounting. The police have now got a new level of oversight above their activity. These new commissioners who've been elected yesterday. Well, we're going to go straight to the police new commissioners and get them to start off their job in exactly the right way by dealing with uninvestigated crime and getting things cleared up, clearing up the mess, and starting off on a new foot. Start as you mean to go on, new commissioners, please. We're going to go to them. Robert has asked the BBC, directly in form of a letter to Lord Patten this week, to deal with the cover-up. So I'm not going to send another letter from us to Lord Patten or to the Director General or Deputy Director General today. We don't need to, because a letter that Robert has written brilliantly is already on Lord Patten's desk, and we should give him a few days to formulate his reply. So thank you to Robert for doing that for us today, and we await Lord Patten's response. We eagerly await Lord Patten's response, and we hope that's going to be the starting gun for really getting this horrible situation cleared up. It's not just a Scottish story though, and that's the problem. It's now become an English story. In 2005, Anne and Hollie, who'd been harassed in Scotland because they were trying to get Hollie's abuse investigated all those years, they moved to Shropshire, England, took refuge in a women's refuge. And then the harassment has started in Shropshire. And this is another thing that needs dealing with, because their home in Shropshire has been wrecked. They've had stones on the window and threats in the streets. And then in June 2010, again, police, what were you doing? Police came, large numbers of police came to the small house in a village outside Shrewsbury and completely trashed it. Who let them in? We want to know the names of the officers of Shropshire Council who were at the scene. Who were they? Shropshire Council, as yet, don't tell us that. We want to know who authorised the raid on the police side. And why? And why did the whole house have to be smashed up? Why did every single door and lock, internal door and lock, have to be smashed? Why did the burglar alarm have to be disabled? Why did they have to go on the roof? They were there for 8 hours in this tiny little terraced house. Why did they have to go on the roof? Neighbours saw police officers actually on the roof of this small house. Anne and Hollie, luckily, were away. And that's also very fishy, because Robert Greene was rung up that morning to ask about the welfare and health of Anne and Hollie. Where were they? Were they at home? What were they doing? And he said no, they're fine, they're absolutely fine, no problems at all. And thus they found out, Shropshire Council found out that the ladies were not there. So an hour later, the police turned up and smashed up the house. Well, all that needs investigating. That's another issue. Not only is there non-investigation of the crime, but there's also breaking of police codes of behaviour in public raids and public situations, and acting like criminal vandals themselves. And why do all these police keep coming down from Scotland to lock up activists in the cells? First Robert Greene, 2 years ago, and now there's another man from Cheshire who was hauled off to Aberdeen, and his house was raided, Robert's house was raided. And who's going to be next? And are the people being threatened? If you mention certain senior people in this case, she was naming, and obviously they were well-connected people, so, you know, there was harassment going on. So finally, and there's also Hollie's father, who was very angry. He's an angry, abusive man, violent man, and he was making, obviously, some big threats to Hollie's mum, and so this is why they came to England. So they came to Shropshire, where there's a women's refuge conveniently ready to receive them. And we wonder why they came to Shropshire, because it turns out that Shropshire, for some reason, is working with the Aberdeen authorities to suppress this whole story. So, you know, what is Shropshire typical of the shires in England, the counties in England, that they would help people in Scotland to cover up what should be a local story up there. So Shropshire have been harassing the two ladies as well, and because of all the harassment and because of the, obviously, publicity going out on the internet and so on, the whole thing has become very public. Helped along by this very charismatic gentleman, Robert Greene, who's not here today. Robert Greene is under a court order not to campaign publicly, and he was actually locked up in Aberdeen prison for 3 months earlier this year. He was sentenced for a year by the judge who tried him in January. When I say judge, it's actually a Scottish sheriff. It's a sheriff in a summary court. Just tried him on breach of the peace charges because he'd been upsetting people. 27 or 30 witnesses for the Crown were brought against him, who all said that he'd upset them and everything he'd been saying about them on the streets and elsewhere was completely false. They were very hurt, alarmed, distressed, and all the rest of it. So they played their part beautifully. So the verdict was breach of the peace. You know, it couldn't be anything other, because it's actually what had happened. He had upset people. He meant to upset people because he wanted to draw public attention. So the naming of names in this case has actually been the key thing to make it public. So, you know, there's an argument for saying we need to be able to name names, even if people are wrongly named. There's always a risk that they're wrongly named. In that case, they can do whatever is available to do to clear their names. They can even bring prosecutions and libel action against the people who do names. There's plenty of ways you can clear your name. But as Lord McAlpine said yesterday, some of the dirt might stick. You know, there's no smoke without a fire, blah, blah, blah.
Can I ask a question? Do you also think that gives an advantage to perhaps the more wealthy people who are accused? Because obviously not everyone can afford court representation that Lord McAlpine can.
I think you can usually get legal aid for, you know, a defamation situation. I haven't actually looked up the law on this, so I wouldn't know. But there's also the possibility, in the case of Hollie's accused abusers, that they could get together and bring what's called a class action. That means a whole lot of people coming to the court at once, pooling their resources. Now that would have been so easy to do in their case, because amongst them was a sheriff of the town of the city of Aberdeen. So he was perfectly able to coordinate a legal action to clear his name and all the other people who've been named. So why hasn't he done that? That's a big question. There's all sorts of things that need investigating here. There's the murder, we believe it's the murder of Anne's brother in 1997. A death in very mysterious circumstances. You know, it stinks to high heaven, that whole incident. He was found in a car, burning car, late at night. Well, not that late at night, about 9 o'clock. In a terrible night of wind and rain, off the road, in a lay-by, off the A90 outside Aberdeen, in this burning car.
with a bit of plastic piping or something on the ground. You know, the circumstances of this are very fishy indeed. It looks very much as though it's stage managed. He had multiple injuries. He had cracked big bang or possibly cracked the back of his skull. He had several broken ribs, cracked sternum. He'd been very roughly handled so he's very badly beaten up. He's died from smoke inhalation. That was the official coroner's verdict. But what makes it very suspicious that there's something more to the story. Could be the verdict was suicide and smoke inhalation. You know, reason for the death was suicide, and the cause of it was smoke inhalation. But with all these injuries and with the circumstances of, you know, where the pipe was on the ground and how the official story is that the catalytic converter caught fire. Well, how did that happen? You know, you need to ask the car manufacturers about that.
And ask you for one.
And who found him? Because the person who found him was given an award for bravery, trying to resuscitate him. Because the official story is that he was resuscitated, and that's how he got all the injuries. Now, why? What was the cause that he might have been disposed of? Because he's the sister of Anne Greig, Hollie's mum, and very close to Hollie, beloved uncle, almost, you know, like the father that her own father was not. Her own father was a monster, and this lovely man was her fatherly friend all her childhood. And he just very shortly before his death had come into the house one evening and found Hollie's dad raping Hollie. So, and Hollie's dad, this only came out a few years later when Hollie started to speak, said that Dad said he'd kill Roy. Roy is the name of her uncle. Dad said he'd kill Roy. And then Roy died. So 2 and 2, everybody, you know. So there's that. There's also the sectioning that I mentioned of Anne and the attempt to frame her with a mental illness, paranoia, you know, all the rest of it. And this is still rebounding on her now, that she's got this mental health incident on her record, this sectioning, even though it's totally unwarranted and totally artificially created. It's still plaguing her now because the Shropshire Council are trying to use that as a justification for their action, possibly to find alternative care for Hollie today.
With the forces, hardcore, settle the score, bringing truth force to the BBC's door. Truth now is rising, and we're realizing, decriminalizing, open up and start shining. It's a crime if you don't shine, so realign to the love, time to intertwine, stop pedophilia, right now. It's time for the human race, we got to grow, we got to start realizing this is real. Satanism, Luciferic worship, this is a real deal. I'm talking witches, snitches, bitches, that's right, come on people, we are these leeches. Come on people, now it's time to start rising. Open up your heart, now it's time to start shining. It's a crime if you're not shining. Realign to the love, you're a sublime thing. Heart, force, settle with the source. Open up your heart, of course. Love is the key to set the world free. Open up your heart for the harmonized reality.
Why does the BBC perpetuate the cover-up of Hollie Greig? Why is there no printed articles of the Hollie Greig scandal? Justice for Hollie Greig. Stop the institutionalised paedophilia. Put an end to this institutionalised paedophilia. It is not an isolated case. This is a very organised network of paedophilia that expands the globe. This is a global problem. This is not a local problem. Who introduced Jimmy Savile into the BBC back into the 1970s? Justice for Hollie Greig, free Robert Greig. Justice for Hollie Greig, free Robert Greig.
Forces resonating with creation and your true life forces. We're doing this one for Hollie Greig. All this stuff, man, it's been put on the stage. Brian Jerry's, man, we're putting the truth here, making sure that we make it all so clear. Abusing, it's time for choosing. Which way are you going? Left, right now. Choose the jab, inject right here. It's so simple, now it's love or fear. Just choose a truth pill. We're on a new thrill. We're moving higher, man. This is the real deal. Open your heart, that's the key. We gotta set the whole planet totally free. We are one energetic consciousness. Infinite potential's gonna be synonymous. It's the next quantum leap to be free. So resonate with the highest form of the sacred energy. Transform to a whole new reality. Peace, equilibrium's got up in normality. Instead of hate and destruction, this is what I call disharmony. My mind had cause ready to soar. The message and the aim is to keep it raw. Bringing truth to your door, truth to your door. BBC's what? Planning Third World War. Bridget operation mobilizing the troops and the infiltrating hierarchy. Don't get duped. They don't want you connecting with your spiritual sources, resonating with creation and your true life forces. So hocus pocus, don't lose your focus. Realign your heart and your soul, you know this. This isn't banter, this isn't a mantra. Articulate, exotic, not robotic. Apprehend or pretend, resurrect to the end. Check your jurisdiction, is this fact, is it fiction? Check your jurisdiction, is this fact, is it fiction? Yeah, what? No, it's like you're looking at the world locked inside of a cage. Where is the cause of all this rage? But too feasible, that's why we gotta keep it pleasable. This is the ability, fast with agility. So never plunder when your thoughts are like thunder. True power of your heart's deep, deep under. Here today, but we're gone tomorrow. We wanna leave the world with the minimal sorrow. Peace! The revolution is coming.